Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Simon of the Chabad House of Delmar, and today we're going to be talking about Lag B'Omer, which is the 33rd day of the Omer. So let's just start really from the beginning. What is the Omer? What are we counting? And we'll get back to basic Judaism, then we can tune in on exactly what Lag B'Omer is all about. Well, there's Passover. People know that's a holiday, and it's always in the spring, March, and April. But something that they don't know, and it's really after the first night, right before the second Seder, there's always two Seders, that in the evening prayers we start counting the Omer one day. Now, what is the Omer? What are we counting about? Well, there's 49 days between Passover and Shavuos. That's the next holiday when the Jewish people, Passover is when the Jewish people left Egypt, the Exodus, and Shavuos is the holiday where we celebrate the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, the Ten Commandments. Now there's 49, actually there's 50 days in between Passover and Shavuos, and we're counting down the days expectantly. I mean, I just say almost the opposite of children in school. Usually they say, oh, 10 days to go, 9 days to go, we're almost out of here already. It's the same idea, I say I have my 10 jobs, and one of them is visiting prisoners. So they actually, I feel bad for them, but they know exactly to the day, they have nothing better to do than to count out how many months and how many days till they get out of jail, which obviously you can understand. They want to get out of there as much as they can. I feel also a little bit bad when some people work for as a job and says, well, when are you going to retire? Oh, in 2 months and 2 days. They're also, I says, well, that's how the prisoners in the jail count down. I feel bad because I love my work. I love what I do, and a lot of people do also in their line of work. But if I feel upset for them that they actually have to feel like they're in jail. And also for school. School should be pleasurable, and when kids say, oh, I'm almost out of here, says, you're not in jail like my prisoners. You're in school. You should enjoy learning. But back to the point, we are expecting, looking forward to receive the Torah at the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, and that's the holiday of Shavuos, so we're always counting. So we count up to 49 days, and on the 50th day, which we don't count, the Torah is given. So that's the matter of counting. And then the idea, what is an Omer? Well, it doesn't apply to the capital district, of course, and up north, because no one's planting anything, and they say even till May, Memorial Day, because there could be frost at night, it'll kill the plant. So you say, what's growing in January? You say, what's January? It's the snow covering the ground. You're not planting anything, and you're not growing anything in January and February. But you have to think that the Bible is dealing with the agricultural climate of Israel. And Israel, if you actually see it, if you take a world atlas, a whole world map, you'll see that fairly much on the same latitude as Florida, for example, or the south of the United States. And if anybody has a good fortune to visit and be in Florida in the winter, you see they're growing a lot of things. Even though up here it's January, February, and snow all over the ground, that if you're in Florida, that there's oranges and grapefruits and all kinds of things are growing. So you have to think about that kind of climate. Israel, which is like our south, or Florida. And in any case, they're growing winter wheat, it's called. So by the time the spring comes around, we just said March, April, which is Passover, they're already harvesting, and they would harvest, and they would call that the Omer. So that would be an important point of why that in those days that they would always have the harvesting, and that was always a celebration, which, they have Oktoberfest, again, trying to relate it to nowadays. People really don't care that much about the seasons. They want to have some fruit. You go to the supermarket, you can buy, like we said, an orange, and in February you can buy it in any day of the year. So it's actually an affluent society we are in. But if you're a farmer, and like in the olden days, Oktoberfest, you have Thanksgiving holiday. This is really, you see all the bounty that the land can bring, so you're more in tune with the seasons more than, of course, that about the harvest. People don't care about. All they have to know is that the supermarket is open 24 hours a day and that you get whatever you want. In any case, so that was a celebration, and that's the first day of the Omer. Now, together with this, on a deeper scale, that was the basic Judaism. A little bit deeper is that there's 49 days, as we said. Now there's 7 emotions, major emotions. But even those 7 we'll talk about specifically are interconnected with another 7. So 7 and 7, you get 49. And therefore that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they were raw, for example. They were slaves, and a slave, doesn't learn, doesn't have time to study a book or a scroll in those days, whatever it is. So that they were, like I said, raw. They didn't have the Torah yet. That was only going to come 7 weeks later. And just a normal person that's enslaved and they're working like a dog, for example, and they were being hit. How can you think? How can you learn? And they didn't have guidelines to better themselves, which is, of course, the Torah. So therefore, that now they had to build themselves up, so to speak. That they had to refine themselves in order to come before the Almighty. Give an example for, I don't know if people have to refine themselves, but you have to learn and prepare for a job, or you want to become a politician and someone to stand before the president, you have to prepare yourself. So therefore the Jewish people, they were going to have God himself, the Almighty, speak to them at the giving of the Torah, and which is Shavuos at Mount Sinai, and you had to prepare yourself, you had to refine yourself. Well, even though the story goes back 3,300 years ago, we're also, of course, we need refinement. And it's a subject in its own right, and we can talk about just for about a minute as a tangent, that of course, that nowadays we're modern technology, we have iPads and iPhones, etc., all the computers. But as human beings, are we better than they were thousands of years ago? We still have wars going on. World is not safer by any means. And we have people that have hatred towards their neighbors. And these are not refined emotions, to say the very least. Are they higher level? There's still crime. People are stealing constantly. It's not that bad in the streets. But for example, that's what I'm saying. People have arguments with each other. So really, if you think about it, are we more advanced, if you say on the human side of things, more than they were thousands of years ago? And I think you would come to the answer that I would also, that we really aren't. We're the same kind of people. Again, they had scrolls, like we said before, and now you have email and e-books and computers, to screens to see everything. Of course, we're advanced in that way. But when it comes to human emotions, we're the same kind of people that you read about in the Bible. In any case, they need refinement, we need refinement, and that's what we're going to talk about now. That the first emotion in the 7 emotions is called chesed in Hebrew. It means kindness. So a person has to show kindness, but then, like we say, it's interwoven, like kindness in kindness. And the second emotion is gevura, which means severity, strictness. So now this, again, immediately you would think, well, wait a minute, what means kindness and severity? Either you're kind or you're a tough guy. Either way. He says that's not necessarily so. That there's kindness, of course, just doesn't need a really definition. We know what it means, kind. But let's say, give you an example, for example, that the person's, and unfortunately, I mean, maybe I know I'm a rabbi, but I'm also a semi-social worker. People come to me for help, and many rabbis, of course, they all do, clergymen. And a person is an alcoholic or they're on drugs, and say, Rabbi, I really desperately need money. Well, the kind thing would be saying, okay, you need money, here's money to help you out. But is that really helping that person out? Because if they're going to take the money and buy alcohol or drugs when they shouldn't, then what are you doing? You're just becoming a part of their problem instead of solving their problem. So that would be chesed and gevura. You got to be nice, but on the other hand, you have to be tough also. Says, well, what's wrong? What do you need? Well, I have a need. All right, so come for a meal. So you can sit down and have a meal with somebody. Just to give money to the wrong person, that isn't good. So you have to know when's the right time. So that's why here we are. We're interweaving different emotions, even opposite emotions, because one's kind, one's strict. Again, it goes the other way. It can be strictness and kindness. Ooh, that's a tough teacher. We're talking about school before. She's a real tough teacher. So is she mean? Or she just wants you to be sure to learn, be sure you do your homework, be sure you do well on the test. Don't talk out in class. Is that a mean teacher? Well, in a way it's mean. It's tough. Hey, sit down in your seat. Don't go anywhere. It's again, I tell always a cute little story. It's again, I have 10 different jobs, and one of them is teaching in school, in the Maimonides school in Albany, the day school. And we have boys and girls separately, and I teach different classes, sometimes boys, and then I go to the girls. And you really teach the kids differently. Boys can sit down, why are you late? And you can be a little bit more tougher with the boys. With girls, and then sometimes they catch me and I say, well, sit down. They say, oh, Rabbi, we're girls, you have to be nice. And okay, girls, sit down. But and then the other hand, in the afternoon, like I say, I go visit prisoners, and listen, they're tough. I'm going to maximum security prisons. These guys are obviously tough guys, and one guy gets up, and I'm still in my mode. Like I say, it's hard to change your mode all the time, and I'm in like a teacher mode and school mode, and one guy gets up. So I strict like a teacher. Where are you going? He just gives me a look, and hey, what did I do over here? And I'm usually a nice guy too, but a guy gets up in the middle of class and says, well, I'm just going to the bathroom, Rabbi. All right, go. Make problems with anybody. But that's what I say. Sometimes, so you have a teacher, oh, they're very strict. Or maybe you could say a policeman. Again, everything I say, you have to think a little bit yourself, own examples and what it means. So policemen, are they being strict when they're giving tickets? Well, they don't want you to speed up. You speed too fast, or you're on your cell phone, or you're texting, which is, of course, against the law. And, well, they're being mean. They're being strict. They gave me a ticket. But what is it? There's so many accidents we know with cell phones and texting. So are they being mean, or that's a meanness of being nice? That they're being strict, but ultimately it's a niceness. No, they don't want you to get into an accident by texting. So again, that's what I'm saying. It's interesting that you could interweave different emotions, even though, like when I threw it out to you, you say, well, how can you be nice and strict at the same time? But I was giving you examples. Now, I would like to, there's 49 days, and maybe we should go through all 49 days, but we surely don't have the time now. But I just showed you a few emotions. I wanted to tune in to Lag B'Omer, which is what I originally said. Lag in Hebrew is very interesting. The maybe little codes for children. An A is 1 and a B is 2, and they, the little games on the backs of cereal boxes. It's cute. But in Hebrew, they make codes and you have to figure them out. But in Hebrew, they use that a lot. Probably the biggest number one code is Chai. They say give $18 if you see these Jewish fundraisers. Chai, which means life. So what's life with 18? What's with the 18? Well, that's because that's the gematria numerical value. The Yud is 10, the Hebrew letter, and the Ches is 8. So 10 Chai is 2 letters. So numerically, it comes out to Chai 18, and that's why you always see 18, the derivatives of 18 when they're asking for charity. That's where it comes from. So that's why Lag, back to our point, the Lamed is 30, the Gimel, the G is 3, so you have 33, that's the 33 days of the Omer. And that's very, very special historically, and it's celebrated today with mainly with children, with the parades, and it's a nice time for kids to do things. We have different functions here in the Capital District. In any case, that the 33rd day is historically 2,000 years ago, is Rabbi Akiva, very famous rabbi, maybe you heard of him. Rabbi Akiva, he had 24,000 students. And students don't mean like 10-year-olds that I teach in school, but they're talking about adults. Disciples probably would be the better word for it. And they all started dying, some unknown plague. It doesn't say exactly what the sickness was, but they started dying. And they died for 32 days, and on the 33rd day, they stopped dying. So that's why it became a big celebration. Why did they die? It just says they didn't give honor to each other. So what does that mean? They didn't give honor? It didn't mean they hate each other? No, because Rabbi Akiva taught his students, should love yourself like yourself. This is the whole business of the Torah. The whole idea of the Torah is to love your neighbor. So these are his disciples, and they didn't do exactly his big principle. So the answer would be, is they didn't. You have to look at the word. They didn't say they didn't like each other. They didn't give honor to each other. I mean, I figure out, or any person figures out, this is the best way to live a life. But the way I think about things, even with politics or an attitude, or this is the way I go about doing things, I figured out the best way to do things. And you know something? I like you, and I like you a lot. So therefore, I figured out the best way to live, and I want you to live just like me. So that's like honor, or maybe that's disrespect the other person. Maybe you found out the best way to do things for yourself. Very nice, very good. But on the other hand, the other person also is obviously a different person. We're all different. We think different. We feel different. And we have to just adjust ourselves to those different levels that we are at. So therefore, you can't impose your goodness on somebody else. That's why you didn't give honor. You disrespected that person from what they were. So even though, it's not nice, but these were great disciples of Rabbi Akiva, that's why they died. And Lag B'Omer, therefore, is one of the big lessons, to respect everybody, who they are, what they are, no matter what they're doing. And maybe it's not your cup of tea, probably isn't, because you're different than everybody else, but you have to respect them from what they are doing. That's one of the major ideas, Lag B'Omer. And a more mystical idea of Lag B'Omer was the day Rabbi Simon Bar Yochai. Now he's the author of the Zohar. The Zohar is the the basic Jewish mystical book. The Zohar, written about 2,000 years ago, and he passed away. So the question you may have, and maybe you should have, is why are you celebrating someone who passed away? It should be a mournful experience. You remember the day of death. And actually in Judaism is that way. People do fast on it's called the Yort site, the anniversary of someone or their parent or somebody they loved, on the anniversary of their death. So why are you celebrating? He says, well, these people, a person comes into this world and has a mission. I don't know if people think that this is big news, because most people just think, yeah, I'm here, I do what I want, and when time's up, time's up. I do what I want. When the game's over, the game's over. But that's not the way deeper mystical Judaism looks at it. You have a specific mission. Just like, again, a person has a job, he says, well, get that project done. You got a week to do it, the boss says, for example. And you say, well, I like when I do dibbly, dabbly, dabbly, dibbly. Wait a minute, the week's over, the boss says, well, are you finished? No, I was just playing around and doing nice things, and I really didn't get to it yet. Well, I gave you a week to do it. This is it. I expected the job to be finished. I told you a week. So that would be probably the example. The trouble is we don't know exactly what we're supposed to do. No one's given us a boss. Well, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want you to see these accomplishments in your life. And you have to tune into yourself, who you are. Maybe you should get a mentor, but to fulfill your full potential in this life. And that's very, very important to understand that there's a mission. So truth of the matter is, to be realistic and be truthful, most people in the world, most people just don't carry out their full potential, what they are in this world for. But when you're talking about a righteous person, this person, Rabbi Simon Bar Yochai, was the author of the Zohar. He was actually on a tremendously high level, and he fulfilled everything. He was a tzaddik, you call it in Hebrew. He was a righteous person, completely righteous, and he fulfilled everything in the Torah. And therefore, we could celebrate because he finished his mission. Again, going back to a school example, that when a person finishes school, even though hopefully they're supposed to like it, and many people do, of course, many kids like it. It was a good experience in high school and college. I loved being there. I learned so much. It was a good time. Yeah, but when you graduate, you see they make super parties in graduation. If you had a good time, why aren't you sad you're leaving? Well, you could have a little sad feelings that you're going away, but mainly, hey, I accomplished something. I finished. I graduated. I did what I had to do, took my courses. I finished. I learned what I needed to learn, and now I'm graduated. So again, this would be a good example of what the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai we celebrate. He finished his job. Most people don't finish their job, and that's very sad, just like with the boss. Hey man, I gave you time. What's with you? I gave you good time to finish the job, and you're goofing off, and you didn't do the job that I want you to do. So that's very important that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is a special day. So that's why the two reasons we celebrate. There's these celebrations, obviously, I know that people may not know about as much as Passover. Everybody knows about a Seder or Rosh Hashanah, the high holidays. You go to synagogue. But this is a very important and a deeper idea of what Lag B'Omer is. Now, again, back to our emotions. Let's tune that up to what Reb Shimon Bar Yochai day of Lag B'Omer is. It's Hod, we gave you two emotions, the characters, kindness, severity, and this is Hod. This literally means glory. I don't know if that describes it so well, but Hod means, for example, to give oneself over to something good, meaning that certain things that we know are beyond us, people are smarter than us. Again, going back to school, if you're a professor, you don't say, who are you? Who are you to tell me anything? They're smarter than you, so listen to them to see what they have to say. And a lot of things in our lives that we just have to give ourselves over because you figure it's the right thing. For example, even the smallest little example of eating. Now, you say, well, I know to eat. Why should you eat? Well, if you don't eat, you'll be hungry. Do you understand the enzymes? Not that don't ask me to explain it to you because I don't understand it myself. But obviously, we know there's a whole process of digestion and converting the energy to the blood cells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what's happening to the most simple person, the baby who eats. He says, well, I'm not going to eat until I understand everything. Well, go to college in a few years. You'll be dead, obviously. You ain't going to be living if you're starving yourself for a few years by the time you go to college and understand, or high school and learn all about the digestive system. So certain things we take on faith. If they're smart, they're intelligent, like I said, it's a professor, it's a teacher, hopefully it's a rabbi, listen to your rabbi, that these are ways to understand that you have to give yourself over. It's not, we said about intellectual, that's very important. You have to be smart and learn as much as you can. It's a very much a part of Judaism, that there's so much to understand, and we want you to understand. We want you to use your mind as much as you can. Like we were just saying before, use your full potential, not, well, I could read a book. Get that a lot in school. Well, I read a book. You're so smart. Come on, it's not enough. You got to be. Get an A. You can push yourself further because you have so much intellectual potential. Push yourself to the most that you can, and also the emotional level. Can you be a better person? Can you help people? Can you see that to be nicer to people? Can you refine your character? I would think 100% of people say yes. Really should be able, and even every day, to refine yourself and be better and better to most people. But saying that's bettering you as a person, there is something, and that's what Shimon Bar Yochai, and that's where Jewish mysticism comes in. You're dealing with something higher than you can understand. Mystical ideas, you can't experiment. For example, like we were talking about chemistry and biology, these things you can experiment, and you can figure out that's what they do in school, and you can, if you want, you can learn these things, and yeah, it's logical, and experiment to figure out exactly what it is. When you're dealing with mysticism, on the other hand, you're dealing with something that's beyond your intellect, something you cannot see, you can't pinpoint on a chart, go here to there like a geometry, right, left, turn around. These things just can't be done. They use, for another show, talking about Jewish mysticism and more in depth, but in any case, they cannot just picture things on a chart exactly the way they are. You're dealing with spiritual ideas, and because you're dealing with spiritual ideas, it's more aloof. And that's why I say that's where Shimon Bar Yochai, who was the author of the Zohar, the basic Jewish mystical work, it's only divine providence he passed away when we're using these spheros, or these characters of Hod and Hod, meaning that we're just totally given over to something. If you have mystical experience, it's something you may not understand, and but you do feel it, and it is part of all of our lives. Everybody has a feeling for God, has a feeling for the Almighty, something higher than them. Obviously, there are things in the world, that you don't understand, events in the world, or we talked about people dying, people living and dying, certain things, people suffering. These are all interesting subjects that we just don't understand. We don't understand why bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people, and that's when we go into the mystical ideas and give it over to higher ideas, and that's what the idea of Hod Shebehod is, something go beyond your logic. You have to grasp and go beyond what you think and what you feel. So just to sum up, we have one more minute to go, that we were talking about Passover to Shavuos, the Passover to the going out of Egypt, but we tried to use these times, these 7 weeks in between, the 49 days, and we said 7 times 7, that refine ourselves to be proper people, to be proper Jewish people, in order to connect ourselves to God ultimately at the end of the Torah, and we should see that again, and to be better people, that in order that the Mashiach, the Messiah, should come. Thank you very much.